Other debates and developments came up in the 1980s and more in the 1990s. I couldn't resist challenging the new claim that a stimulus to aggregate demand in a country spills over to trading partners, the rising tide view. I was drawn to the recurrent controversy over whether booms and slumps are mainly driven by structural forces or by vicissitudes of aggregate demand. Keynes versus Friedrich Hayek. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, I was invited to the ensuing discussion over capitalism and socialism, and with the stagnation in Italy, I was later enlisted to analyze the weakness of enterprise and inclusion in Italy's economy. Yet the range of contributions for which I was mainly remembered in those years, such as the argument that expectations in real-life economies may be off the mark, and the argument that wages in the lowest echelons of the labor force can be pulled up through employment subsidies, began to be remote from the new interests I developed in the new century. I started to explore a new course, to attempt a rethinking of the theory of innovation that had been introduced by Schumpeter a century earlier in his 1911-1912 book and later taught to Harvard students, such as Solow, who in 1956 incorporated that theory into his growth model, a new model that I and every trained economist had to study. The fresh perspective on the economy, the kind of modern economy that Paul Johnson saw as beginning around 1815 in Britain and first flowered around the late 1850s in the United States and Europe, began to take shape in my mind. When I looked back at the standard theories of my contemporaries, and my theories too, I began to think it was odd that while I and other economic theorists had been using the creativity that people commonly have, thus the imagination to create new theories and new things, in not one of the existing theoretical models were any of the actors described as exhibiting the slightest creativity. In this respect, my previous theoretical work, like that of all the others' work, had adhered to the premise of existing economics that the actors in the economy possess and exhibit no creativity, or have no thought of using whatever creativity they might have. This economics recognized only the disutility of work, failing to recognize what household surveys term job satisfaction. In parallel to that desire to create a theoretical model that was fundamentally mine, rather than an extension or improvement of the basic model of another theorist, I became open to recognizing in my own thinking the creativity of people in general. I came to doubt that Schumpeter's theory of innovation came even close to explaining the explosion of productivity growth from the mid-19th to the mid-20th century. I felt ready to build a theory based on the desire of a great many people to use their creativity, their ingenuity and imagination.